Welcome to the Purpose Focused Advisor, a podcast for financial planners, advisors, and RIAs looking to get the most out of yourself and your business. Join Rob Brown and Phil Calandra as they walk you through a journey that will allow you to take action in your business and your life so you can be the best that you can possibly be. Now here are your hosts, Rob and Phil.
Okay, welcome everybody. It is time once again for the Purpose Focused Advisor. And it's just me today as your host, Rob Brown. Phil is away, but I'm excited to speak with Tess Rowland. Tess is a financial advisor, a fee-only planner, who started in her working career as a registered nurse working in critical care. And then she moved into the accounting field, which led her in turn to the financial planning world. So it's been an interesting journey that you've taken, Tess. And I think the way that you have talked to me in preparing for this the show is each step has been an important part of leading to where you are today in being able to do the awesome job that you do for your clients. And Tess, I was going to say, is part of my introduction where you're from, but I can't pronounce the name of that city. So maybe as you say hello, you can tell us where you're from and say that correctly. And maybe a little bit of what part of the world you're in.
Oh, it's an interesting part of the world. But thank you, Rob, for letting me be on your podcast today. And I'm just privileged to be a part of this organization. And I enjoy listening to your podcast and gain a lot of wisdom from the other advisors as well. So I hope to help other advisors with my story too. Since he can't pronounce it and it's very understandable, I currently live in a town in northern Wisconsin on a lake, but the town mailing address is Lac de Flambeau, Wisconsin. Lac de Flambeau. We're on an Indian reservation, and it means lake of the tribe of the light. So anyway, we're fortunate to be up here. My husband retired in 2021, so we built a home up here on the lake so he could go fishing. And that's what we do. And we just enjoy the lake life up here.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. And that's a beautiful part of the country, although I imagine it is very cold in the winter.
It is very cold. And so we tend to find ways to escape the North Woods a little bit in the winter, but summers are beautiful. So we're glad to be a part of the community up here.
Right. That's great. And thanks for helping me with that. And I still won't try.
No problem. No, don't do it. It's okay. I have a hard time.
And I put pressure on you to say it. But let's jump in, Tess. I wanna talk with you first about your journey, because one of the things I love about talking to and working with financial advisors are the unique paths that advisors take to get to where they are and doing what they're doing. And sometimes I'll meet an advisor and say, well, we're all the same. We all just do wealth management and we all just do financial planning. So we're all the same. And I think that's a self-defeating attitude. But anyway, the truth is nobody's the same, because nobody has the same story. And our stories influence the way that we live and the way that we work. So talk a little bit about your journey. And, without spending the whole half hour talking about that, I do want to go back, though, to that nursing career, because that has played a part in how you care for your clients.
It has been a major portion of my development of listening, conversational skills, and understanding the nonverbal and verbal communications that are so essential to wealth management and financial planning. I grew up in a rural farming community outside of Des Moines, Iowa. I went to nursing school in Des Moines, and I graduated with a diploma. I took my RN boards and passed them, and then I started working at a hospital in Des Moines in critical care areas. And my favorite what I really loved the most was the immediate post-op recovery of an open heart patient. It's such a miracle that they have this surgery and then they come back, and then just how we take care of them in their recovery process. So I worked several years in critical care. During that time, I met and married my best friend, and I got my bachelor's degree in science. My husband had an opportunity to further his education, and we moved to Kansas City. And I got part-time employment at a cardiac catheterization lab. So I helped with the diagnosis of heart disease rather than the surgery. After he finished his training, we moved to a town. You think Lac du Flambeau is hard to say. We moved to a town called Kankakee, Illinois.
I can do that, Kankakee.
It's about an hour south of Chicago. And we moved there for a great practice opportunity for my husband and to be closer to family. When we first kind of moved there, they were just establishing a cardiac cath lab in Kankakee. It was a mobile cath lab. So they reached out to me. There were 2 hospitals there. And I was asked, and I chaired the development of the nursing protocol for the cath lab. And then at that time, they asked me to head up the cath lab, but I was having children at that time, and I decided to take a break. So I stayed home, and we had 3 children. And then when our youngest was in 2nd grade, I started getting the itch again to learn something new and something different. So I started taking accounting classes at our local university, and I really, really liked the accounting. I think perhaps part of it was because I had such an inspiring accounting professor. Amazing. Long story, fast forward, while the kids were in school, I finished the prerequisites for sitting for the CPA exam. So I took the CPA exam, and I waited till our oldest went off to college, and then I started working at a local accounting firm in auditing, income tax preparation, small businesses. Great experience. Within that accounting firm, a wealth management firm had been established. And so that founder asked me if I'd want to consider coming over to the wealth management side. So I did kind of both for a while, and then I really liked the wealth management side. And so I started working as a wealth advisor in 2007. He sold the company to a larger corporate firm in 2016. In 2000, and I loved it. I worked with 401ks, individuals, small businesses. In 2018, I found myself at odds with the management of the corporation, and so I resigned. The letter that went out to the clients was that I had retired. I took a little bit of time to think about that, and I went, I want to retire on my own terms, not because of a letter. And so I found Cheryl Garrett through the Garrett Planning Network and Garrett Investment Advisors at that time. I reached out to them, and they have we worked really well together. So I currently am serving as a investment advisor representative of CGN Advisors out of Manhattan, Kansas. They were formerly known as Garrett Investment Advisors. So I also got my CFP while working, and then I got my CDFA, which is a Certified Divorce Financial Analyst as well. So because I have my own business, I started in 2019, but am affiliated and part of CGN Advisors, I kind of set my own schedule. I work remotely, primarily with Zoom, but I also maintain an office in Kankakee. I periodically go down and meet with clients in person. It's been an interesting journey, and people will say, well, Tess, why did you go from nursing to accounting and investments? And I said, it's really a critical junction, I just say, instead of taking care of their physical needs, I'm taking care of their financial needs, because they're both people usually approaching, making initial discovery appointments with me for financial planning or investments. They're having some anxiety or some crisis about most of the time, retirement. What do I do? What are my choices? And I think the skills that I learned as a critical care nurse have really helped me hone that conversation. And most often when I meet with these clients, they say, Tess, I really trust you. And I'm like, you know what? I trust myself in the process, but I have to earn your trust. And I've had a number of prospects that have converted to clients said, I saw that you were a critical care nurse, so I immediately knew I would be able to work with you. So that's been a big blessing in my life. So
yeah, well, that's quite a journey, and there are a couple of nuggets in there that I think are really important that I'd love to unpack a little bit further. You
Sure.
talked about in nursing the importance of being able to take cues from both verbal and nonverbal communication. How does that play
Yes.
into your work now as an advisor?
It's one of the, for an example, and my focus, my niche pretty much is 5 years prior to retirement, at retirement and through. When I was in a meeting one time and the senior advisor asked me to come into the meeting. And so it was a husband and wife and pretty substantial assets. And after the meeting, the lead advisor said, well, Tess, how do you think it went? How do you think it went? And I go, well, honestly, and he goes, yeah. And I said, okay, here you go. You did not look at the wife once. You did not address her. So she totally disengaged. The nonverbal was, I'm not part of this. And the good part is they did become wealth management clients, but the majority of females within a year of their spouse passing typically will find another advisor because they haven't connected with that current advisor when they were a couple. And so in prospect meetings, I look, you can kind of see their anxiety. Are there lots of questions? Are there nonverbal, direct eye contact? It's all about making a connection and making each of us feel like we're a part of a relationship and adding value.
Which goes back to your point about when you're talking about trust previously, where you say that you, to them, hey, I trust myself and my process, but I want to earn your trust.
Correct.
Do you think that earning someone's trust is one of the most important parts of establishing a good relationship?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's really, I'm finding as I go along, because I'm still learning and in my career, that it has to be a good fit. It just can't be like, okay, I'll work with you. We'll see how it goes. But it has to be mutually beneficial. The relationship is more important than the work because you just have to be able to understand each other and communicate as an advisor.
Yeah, we've been actually talking a little bit about that with some of our clients and on this podcast that we live in a world now because of technology and how fast things move. Advisors can kind of take for granted their process and go, skip quickly to the financial planning software, put the information in, and say, "Hey, I've done a good job for you." But then that plan doesn't stick, or or they don't even become clients in the first place because there's no
Right.
trust behind the plan. But when you build a
Correct.
plan with trust, that's a major success factor.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
And something else that you mentioned, or maybe not mentioned specifically, but was obvious in the way that you described your career, is you are constantly learning. Even to the point of getting an additional designation within the last couple of years because you felt that would help you in your work. Talk a little bit about why that constantly being curious, because it doesn't have to be letters behind your name, but because I imagine
Right.
there's a lot of learning or studying that you do just to make sure that you're doing the best that you can for your clients.
Absolutely. I just by nature, I'm just a lifelong learner. And I feel that everyone just benefits. The world is a better place when we learn and understand people and gain more knowledge. And I just want to be the best advisor to my clients that I can. And so but I thought, it has been a couple of years since I've really concentrated in my field of study. And I'm like, no, I don't need any more initials. I'm just here about learning about life and what's important to clients and what do they need to know? How can I be the best advisor? What information and additional knowledge do I need to gain to enhance their financial education? I'm really, there's going to be a huge wealth transfer in these next few decades. And typically women outsurvive their spouses. And I have seen women, lady after lady, who this event happens to them and they are totally lost. They don't know what to do because they haven't ever had to manage the finances, from checking account balancing to investments. And so any knowledge I can give to women to help them to say, it's not really hard. It's just a lot. And so find that trusted advisor to help you along that path, because it's a hard, arduous path. Subject isn't difficult, it's an arduous path. And we want to really secure and be efficient with their resources and assets, not just for their retirement and their financial security, but for the generations to follow. So that's what's really important to me.
So what's the key to kind of flipping the switch for a woman in a situation like that, where all of a sudden they realize that they were left out of the conversation? What do you do to just, because it can't, I'm sure it's more like a dimmer switch where you're turning it up
Right.
slowly. You're not just, flipping the switch and the light goes on, 100 watts.
Just for example, I just had a lady who just got a divorce last December, and she is coming to some inheritance from her parents. And she was just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know anything about this. And I said, we're going to take this. It's like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. We go slowly and we do small meetings, small conversations to get so that there's more understanding and comprehension. And so you just have to be patient and just work with them and encourage them.
Right. Yeah. Being, as we call it in my firm, being truest fans of your clients and letting them know how much you care about them is extremely important. Let's change directions a little bit.
Okay.
Are there any innovations or tools or techniques that you've developed over the last few years that have really helped fuel your success?
I just think it's being available for meetings. I've had to work with Zoom a lot. I'm on Zoom. I developed my website, but I try to make it personal and approachable. And I just think it's just a willingness to have a conversation. Not all those conversations with prospects become clients. But in the meantime, if you can still have a positive effect on them, that's fine. And I'm learning that fees may become a stumbling block at times, and I don't want that to be that. But I also am saying my time and expertise is valuable. So if some clients say I don't want to pay that, then I understand and hope that they find another person that will give them what they're looking for.
I bet you it's hard, given your background, I bet you it's hard for you to say no to somebody sometimes.
Yes, that is probably one of the hardest things. And I just had another conversation recently with a prospect who had been referred to me by another financial planner. And I just looked at her and I said, I am just really sorry, but I don't think I can give you value. And I don't think that what I'm going to charge is going to be beneficial to you. And they're like, okay, I appreciate your honesty. So,
yeah, and that is so important, because I talk to so many advisors these days who or not even just these days. This goes back probably decades, where there is a desire to serve the type of person that you can actually serve the best. But there's a tendency to say, okay, well, this won't be too hard. This is low hanging fruit. I'm going to go ahead and work with them
Yes.
anyway. And that ability to say no, say, I'm not the best advisor for you. There's somebody out there that can help you. In fact, I might even try to introduce you to somebody else on my network who could help you. But it's okay to say, I'm not the right person for you. And that makes saying no easier, because you're not saying no to them. You're saying, it's me who's the problem here.
But that is a very hard thing, because I tend to have a servant's heart, and I want to help all those who are. I mean, it's huge for somebody to reach out and say, I need help, whether it's in, you know, in a health aspect or financial, but you can't serve everyone. And so you have to go, I want to give the best service for those people that is a good fit. So saying no is the hard part. Yeah.
Yes, I'm sure. What's the key driver to your growth? How do you find and attract new clients?
Some of them come from referrals, existing clients, which those tend to be the best ones for me, because they already know, um, and they're comfortable with the friend or the family member. I have my website. I'm on LinkedIn, and then I'm also a part of the Garrett Planning Network and CGN Advisors. So I get a lot from the Garrett Planning Network. Kiplinger often refers to Cheryl Garrett and the Garrett Planning Network. And then there's a gentleman, Clark Howard. He has a podcast, and he's out there helping people with basic finances and living their lives. And he refers to the Garrett Planning Network as well. So I think there's been a huge boost
Right.
in people finding me through that.
Yeah.
And there's a
And
lot of great financial planners out there with the Garrett Planning Network. So
yeah, no, it has a terrific reputation. I can remember when it
mhm.
was just getting started. But I think, just to kind of play that back just a little bit, a couple of things that are really important, and I love pointing this out anytime somebody says it. Most of our best clients, and that includes me in growing my coaching practice, come from recommendations from people that we know, especially satisfied clients. And when you
Yes.
create an atmosphere, an environment that makes giving those referrals
Mhm.
more easier, more elegant, then it happens. And then those
Correct.
people, almost, if in large part, know what you do, a better sense of how you do it. So
Mhm.
you don't have to say no as often.
Right. I know I've read some literature, and I've heard some people speak about, um, yes, the existing client referral is the best source for future. And so they always say, well, if you know of somebody that would benefit from my services. But I tell you, Rob, that's not part of my natural vocabulary, where I'm saying, can you refer somebody to me? I just let it organically happen. And honestly, I have been blessed immeasurably with those people that have come down my
Right.
pathway. And
Right.
so I'm very thankful for what I have.
Right. And I'm one to encourage the people that I work with, the advisors that I work with, to put a little gas on that, to make sure that at the very least you're letting your clients know that you're open. I call it letting them know you're open for business, because there's
Correct.
a I think there's this false belief among advisors that every client knows that advisor, if they are open for business, is open for business. But if you don't say that, if you don't imply it, if you don't tell some stories to your clients about ways that you have helped other people, if you don't have a warm and inviting way of treating people, then that can
Right.
even make that more passive way of bringing in referrals more difficult.
Right.
And so I think
Right.
that's important.
And
And
it's
then I think,
something, it's a challenge. I have to work
yeah,
on that. Yeah.
yeah. And then, another thing that you talked about your Garrett network
Uh-huh.
in particular, but I also think that points to the second, to me, best way of bringing clients is find a network. What is that network that you can be part of, whether it's a formal industry network or a network of other professionals in your community, because um, that's another source of referrals or introductions
Right.
that are strong and powerful, because just like your clients, the people in that network have some sense of what you do and how well you do it, so it's easier to give those introductions.
Yes. And I've also been fortunate. I've been asked to speak at um, a number of events, particularly women's events. I gave a speech in 20 in, yeah, so in 19 on it was called The Power of the Purse, and just talking about women and basic finances. And that was to a United Way and Women in Network in Kankakee. And then they had asked me to speak at United Way, and I had a talk already prepared. It was called Flip Flops, Stilettos, and Sneakers. Let's take a walk. And it was, I had it already, but then COVID hit, and they asked me to put it on Zoom presentation, but I wasn't comfortable with Zoom at that time. So I still have that in my back pocket, my arsenal to give to some women's organization. It's about basic finances, but flip flops when you're little, stilettos your working years, and sneakers in your retirement. So just the continuum about pathways and kind of crucial financial literacy milestones and issues that those decades present.
Well, it sounds like those are a couple of great
Yeah,
talks that you could give when you find the right opportunity. And I would encourage you
exactly.
to look for those opportunities, because that's one additional way that you can help that group of people that you specialize in serving. Know that you're out there, know that there are people who can help them, and it's not the kind of the tired old, 5 steps to financial planning for women, which um,
Exactly. I
uh,
did one talk one time. It was the ABCs of IRAs, and catchy title, but oh, everybody was like, it was a snooze factor. So that wasn't exactly a, they were like, okay, but I was just trying to teach them about basics of IRAs.
right,
But you have to kind of, I've learned to adjust who's the audience and what's their level and what do you want, what are
right,
the two key points you want them to take away.
right. How do you get out there in front of people? So as
Yeah.
we begin to land the plane here, Tess, I'm curious, when you look at your career going forward,
Mhm.
what do you think a big challenge is that you might face in taking your business to whatever that next level of success is that you have in mind?
It's one of the challenges is because I'm up in northern Wisconsin, it's beautiful, but it's not a high population density. So for me to go out and really find people, it's a little bit more of a challenge. I'm still in Kankakee. We were there for 34 years. So I'm still connected back there, but I'm in sort of transition. I also I'm not wanting to retire, but I'm also looking at the challenge for succession planning. And how do I have to put my client first. And I don't want this to be, oh, one day the door is open, the next day the door is closed. It has to be a trusted, well thought out, well planned process. So that's a big challenge for me to make sure that transition happens and it
Yeah, and that's
happens well.
yeah, oh, I love that you said that there at the end, because as I talk to a lot of advisors, especially older advisors who are within um, spitting distance, for lack of a more graceful way to say it, of retirement, sometimes I'll hear them say, "Well, you know, I know I'm not ready yet, but at some point I know that I'll know that I'm 2 years away, and then I'll start working on it. And
Right.
when you say that you'll be 2 years away, probably means you're longer away than you think you are. So you won't, as you suggested, end well. You'll have to do something more quickly that may mean that you don't monetize the value of the business that you've built. But secondarily, again, as you suggested, you don't really put your clients in a place where you really feel secure that you've given them the best, go forward path possible.
And I feel like that's just as an important obligation to taking them on as clients as transitioning them to another advisor that would not do it the same, but still have the same values and processes that I have and that the clients are used to receiving. I've heard some horror stories from clients like, we never hear from our advisor. I'm like, I don't want that to be said. And that doesn't mean that you're servicing them well, or maybe the client isn't receptive to meetings. So there's a variety of factors, but I want to make sure I'm doing the best job that I can and that I'm serving my clients as best as I can.
Right. And I would argue that's when you feel that way, that is echoing that fiduciary responsibility today by pushing it out into the future.
Yeah.
And it may be a bit uncontrollable because you ultimately don't have the final control, but you can set the right direction and do the best that you can. Well, Tess, this has been an awesome conversation. You said before we got started that you were a bit nervous. You didn't think we could pull this off, but it's been an awesome conversation. I love the spirit that you have and the calmness that you have, even though you said you were nervous, about the way that you serve your clients, do your best for them, deal with them in difficult situations, and how that probably relates very much back to being a nurse in an operating room or in the recovery room after open heart surgery. It kind of all fits together very naturally. And
I still keep my RN license, and I don't know why. I just feel like it's part of who I am. So during COVID, one of the hospitals in Kankakee reached out and said, "Do you still have your nursing license?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Would you be willing to volunteer and help give COVID vaccines?" And so it was that very first round of COVID vaccines, and people were lined out the door, and they would come in and I would give them their shot, and they had tears in their eyes. They were like, thank you so much." So I'm doing my wealth advising. I'm starting my own wealth management firm, and I'm being able to give COVID vaccines. So it was just a great blending of those two careers and still giving to people. And that's what I think life is about. We give, we receive, but we give too.
Yeah.
So.
No, I can tell from our conversation that you are definitely a giver. Well, that's it. We've got to call the podcast to a close here. Tess, thanks for being on the podcast today. Thanks to our audience for listening in. And as always, we're rooting for your success. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Purpose Focused Advisor. If you want to learn more, head over to our website, truestfancoaching.com. There you'll learn all about becoming a purpose-focused advisor. You'll also find today's show notes and links to the other gifts and resources we talked about during the episode. Again, thanks for listening, and remember, we're rooting for your success.